I didn't even get to take my first sip of coffee when I saw her. She was standing right there, just beyond the glass door to my porch. The early morning sun caught the golden edges of her fur. My chest tightened. In her mouth hung a tiny limp body. At first, my brain screamed, "Dead kitten." But then I saw the tiny ribcage moving, rising and falling so weakly I almost missed it. She set it down on the porch floorboards. Its legs wobbled and gave out under its tiny body. Behind her, 2 more cubs clung to her back legs, pressing their faces into her fur. I stood frozen, one hand gripping my chipped coffee mug, the other hovering near the door handle. For a moment, it felt like we were 2 neighbors staring at each other, silently begging for something neither could say out loud. My heart hammered in my throat. I remembered her eyes. A month ago, she showed up alone, ribs poking through her spotted coat. I had left a whole chicken outside that day. She took it, her eyes locked on mine the whole time, before melting back into the trees. Today her eyes were different, softer, desperate. The kitten on the porch let out a thin, broken cry. My hand moved on its own, sliding open the door. The rattle of metal startled her. Her head shot up, her ears flattened, and she took one step back, the cubs stumbling to keep up with her. My voice came out rough. "Hey, it's okay. Hold on." I backed away into the kitchen, setting down my coffee so hard it sloshed onto the counter. I yanked open the fridge. Half a venison roast from last week. I grabbed it, didn't even bother with a plate. When I came back to the porch, she hadn't moved. Her eyes tracked every step as I lowered the roast onto the wooden planks. The cub on the ground mewled again, weaker this time. It tried to stand but flopped sideways. Something twisted in my gut. I could hear my own breath, ragged and shaky. She didn't move at first. Her eyes flicked from me to the meat. I stepped back into the house and shut the glass door. Only then did she pad forward, cautiously, her huge paws silent on the boards. She sniffed the meat, then took it in her jaws and dropped it in front of the limp cub. "Eat," I whispered through the glass. "Please." But the cub didn't move. Its eyes were half closed now, its tiny sides fluttering with shallow breaths. The other 2 cubs whimpered and pressed closer to their mother's legs. She bent down, nudged the roast toward the sick cub, then let out a deep, throaty chirrup. The cub didn't react. I pressed my hand to the glass. My pulse was roaring in my ears. She nudged it again, harder this time. Nothing. "No, come on, little one." Her head snapped up to me. For a second, her gaze pinned me in place. Then she lifted the cub gently by the scruff, turned, and walked to the edge of the porch. She set it down again in the grass, out of the sun. The other 2 cubs followed, tails low, tiny ears flat with worry. She sat there for a long moment, staring back at me. Her chest heaved with each slow breath. Then she turned back to her baby, licking its head in small, desperate strokes. I stood there, gripping the door frame so hard my knuckles went white. I felt so useless, just a man in a house, watching a wild mother trying to save her dying child. As the minutes ticked by, the cub's breathing grew shallower. Its little chest barely moved. The mother licked faster now, her tail flicking in short, anxious whips. Suddenly, the cub went completely still. My throat closed up. I could feel hot tears burning my eyes. The mother pressed her nose into its side, nuzzling it over and over, as if trying to wake it up. Behind her, one of the other cubs let out a terrified wail. She turned, gave it one quiet chirrup, then bent to pick up the lifeless body again. She looked at me one last time, her eyes dark and wide with something I couldn't name. Then she padded off into the trees, her 2 living cubs scrambling after her. I sank to the floor, my back against the glass, staring at the empty porch where moments ago life and death had played out in front of me. My coffee sat on the counter, cold and forgotten. My chest felt like it was caving in, and all I could think was, she came here because she trusted me to help, and I couldn't do a damn thing. The porch felt emptier than it ever had before. That day, I didn't go to work. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at the tree line, waiting for her to come back. Hours passed. The sun rose higher, baking the wooden boards outside. Flies gathered where the roast had been, buzzing against the glass. My chest felt heavy, like there was a rock pressing down on my lungs. By late afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a bowl, filled it with water, and stepped outside. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Every creak of the porch made me flinch. I set the bowl down near the spot where the cub had lain. For a moment, I just stood there, looking out into the silent trees. I whispered under my breath, "Please come back." That evening, as the sun sank low and painted the sky in bruised purples and oranges, she returned. I saw her first as a shadow between the pines. Then her ears caught the dying light, those black tufts twitching forward. She stepped out, silent as dusk itself. 2 cubs clung to her legs again. They looked smaller than before, their bellies hollowed out, eyes dull with hunger. I didn't know what to do. My brain screamed, "Stay inside. They're wild, they're dangerous." But my chest burned with something stronger. I slid open the door and stepped out slowly. Her head lifted, her eyes locked onto mine. The cubs whimpered, one of them stumbling sideways before pressing its face into her fur. I crouched down, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped the roast I'd brought out this time. I placed it on the porch, then backed away, sitting down with my back against the wall. My knees were pulled to my chest like I was a scared kid again. She didn't move. Her eyes flicked from me to the meat and back again. Finally, she took one slow step forward. Then another. Her paws made no sound on the boards. The cubs followed, their tiny claws clicking softly. She lowered her head to the meat and tore off a chunk. She didn't eat it herself. Instead, she dropped it in front of the weaker cub. It sniffed at it, whimpered, then sank down on trembling legs, gnawing weakly. My throat tightened. I realized I was holding my breath. The other cub pressed closer to her, looking up at her with wide, worried eyes. She tore off another piece and dropped it in front of that one too. I watched them eat, my chest aching with a twisted mix of relief and sorrow. I remembered the first time I saw her. It was early spring, snow still clinging to the shady edges of the forest. I'd gone out to check the traps I'd set for rabbits. That day, I saw her near the tree lean, ribs stark against her spotted coat. She didn't run. She just stood there, watching me, too tired to move. I'd felt something crack open inside my chest that day. I went back to the cabin, grabbed the chicken I was saving for dinner, and left it on a flat rock near the woods. Later, I watched her take it, her eyes never leaving mine. Now, looking at her feeding her babies, I felt that same crack widen, but fear still gnawed at the edges of my mind. What if she turned on me? What if she saw me as a threat? She finished feeding the cubs, then picked up what was left of the roast and moved back to the edge of the porch. She sat down there, her eyes locked onto mine. The cubs curled up at her paws, licking their tiny faces clean. That's when I saw it. Dark smears along her side. At first, I thought it was dirt, but as she shifted, the fading light caught it just right, and I saw the deep red glistening against her fur. Blood. My breath caught in my throat. I squinted, leaning forward slightly. The smear ran down from her shoulder, matting the fur along her ribs. My stomach twisted. She was hurt. She turned her head, licking one of the cubs behind the ears. Her ears flicked back toward me. For a moment, her eyes softened, like she was telling me something without words. Then she lowered her head, gathering the cubs closer to her body. I sat there, shaking, not knowing what to do. Should I call someone? Try to help her myself? She was wild, dangerous, but the sight of her blood, the way she pressed her babies close, it felt like a punch to the chest. I didn't move. I just sat there, knees to my chest, heart pounding like a drum, as darkness fell around us. The only sound was the faint whimper of the cubs and the slow, pained breathing of their mother. And in that moment, I knew sleep wouldn't come that night. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, those dark eyes filled with pain and fear. When the dawn finally came, I was already up, pacing the kitchen floor, chewing on my thumbnail until it bled. She was hurt. That blood wasn't from a rabbit or deer. It was hers. I couldn't get the image out of my mind. The way her fur clumped with dried blood, the way she moved so carefully, like each step cost her something. I made coffee but didn't touch it. My stomach was twisted into too many knots. I kept walking to the window, looking out into the gray morning. The forest was silent. No movement. No flicker of ear tufts among the trees. What the hell do I do? She's a wild animal, my mind screamed. Dangerous. She could rip your throat out before you even moved. But another voice, quieter but stronger, said, "She came here because she trusts you." I grabbed my phone from the counter. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I scrolled through my contacts until I found his name. Mike. Mike was a vet in town. We'd been friends since high school. He knew I spent most of my time out here, hunting, trapping, living quiet. He never judged. Just patched up my old hound when he got into trouble with raccoons. I hit call. It rang twice before he answered, his voice groggy with sleep. Hey man, what's up? I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw. Mike, I need your help. What happened? You okay? It's not me. It's a lynx. She's hurt. She came to my porch last night with her cubs. She's bleeding, Mike. Bad. There was a pause. I could hear him sitting up, the bedsheets rustling. A lynx? At your place? Yeah. She trusts me, I think. I fed her before, but I don't know what to do. She's got babies. If she dies. He sighed, long and heavy. You know I can't exactly treat a wild lynx, right? That's wildlife service territory. I know. I don't want them to put her down. She's got cubs, Mike. Another pause. Then his voice softened. All right. Listen, I'll come out. I can at least take a look, see how bad it is. But if it's serious, we'll have to call Fish and Game. You know that. Yeah. Thanks, man. I hung up and sat down hard on the kitchen chair. My hands were still trembling. The idea of calling wildlife services made my stomach twist even tighter. I knew what they'd do. A wounded lynx with cubs near human homes? They'd put her down without thinking twice. I got up and went to the window again. The sun was rising, turning the trees gold. Then I saw it, movement near the edge of the clearing. My chest clenched. She was back. She limped out of the shadows, one paw barely touching the ground. The cubs trailed after her, their eyes dull with hunger and fear. I pushed open the door and stepped onto the porch. She froze. Her eyes locked onto mine. The cubs pressed against her injured leg, whining softly. Hey girl, it's okay. Help is coming. She didn't move, just watched me with those deep, unblinking eyes. Behind me, I heard gravel crunching. Tires on my driveway. Relief flooded my chest. Mike was here, but when I turned around, my heart stopped. It wasn't Mike. A beat-up red pickup truck was pulling up next to my cabin. The engine cut off with a cough. The driver's door swung open, and a man climbed out. He wore camo pants, heavy boots, and a blaze orange vest. A rifle was slung over his shoulder. Morning, he called out, his voice rough like gravel. Got yourself a bit of a problem there, huh? I felt ice slide down my spine. My mouth opened, but no words came out. He glanced past me at the lynx, his eyes narrowing. You know those things you'll take down a deer just as easy as a dog, right? I swallowed hard, forcing words out past the lump in my throat. Leave her be. She's hurt. She's got babies. He snorted, spitting into the dirt. All the more reason to take care of it now before she starts coming around looking for more handouts. My fists clenched at my sides. Behind me, the lynx let out a low, warning growl. And in that moment, I realized this was about to become something much worse than I ever imagined. The hunter took a few steps closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. I moved to block his path, my heart slamming against my ribs so hard it almost hurt. Don't, I said, my voice shaking. Just leave her alone. He cocked his head, looking at me like I was a bug he was thinking about stepping on. You serious right now? That thing's wounded. It's dangerous. Could have rabies for all you know. Behind me, the lynx growled low in her throat, the cubs pressing into her injured leg. I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting to see what I'd do. She's not sick, I said, forcing steel into my voice. She's hurt. There's a difference. He spat again, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Difference don't matter when it's tearing up your dogs or taking down deer you've been tracking all season. He shifted his rifle off his shoulder, letting it hang loose at his side. Not aiming. Not yet. But my chest tightened anyway. Look, I said, holding up a shaking hand. My buddy's on his way. He's a vet. We're gonna help her. A vet? He barked a laugh. What? You gonna give it stitches and send it on its merry way? I didn't answer. My mind was spinning so fast it felt like I might pass out. Then, from down the drive, another engine. Relief flooded me so hard my knees almost buckled. Mike's old blue truck pulled up behind the hunters. He stepped out, wearing scrubs under his worn Carhartt jacket. His eyes took in the scene in one quick sweep. Me standing tense, the hunter gripping his rifle, the lynx and her cubs pressed against the porch. Hey, Mike called, keeping his voice calm and easy. What's going on here? The hunter turned, his lip curling. Your idiot friend here thinks he can play Snow White with a goddamn lynx. Mike raised his hands slightly, palms out. Nobody's playing anything. Let's just take it easy. He walked over to me, speaking low so only I could hear. You okay? I nodded, swallowing hard. She's hurt, Mike. Bad. I can't let him shoot her. Mike looked past me at the lynx. His eyes softened for a split second before he turned back to the hunter. Look, man. He's right. She's hurt, not sick. We can sedate her, check the wound, and call fish and game if it's beyond us. The hunter snorted, but his grip on the rifle eased a little. You do what you want. But if she comes near my property, I'm taking care of it. He turned and stomped back to his truck, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. The engine roared to life, and he spun out down the drive, leaving a spray of gravel behind. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Mike clapped a hand on my shoulder. Let's see what we're dealing with. We moved slowly toward her. She tensed, her ears flattening, but she didn't run. Mike crouched down, pulling a small syringe from his pocket. Easy, girl, he murmured. We're just gonna help. He moved closer, inch by inch, until he was within arm's reach. The lynx growled low, her teeth bared, but she didn't strike. Mike jabbed the syringe into her flank quickly and stepped back. She flinched but didn't bolt. Within seconds, her legs wobbled. She sank down onto her belly, breathing hard. Mike waited, watching her eyes until they glazed over slightly. Okay, he said, exhaling. Let's see. He moved forward and parted the fur along her ribs. I winced. The wound was deep, a clean slice running from her shoulder down her side. Probably a trap, Mike said. Might have grazed her when she pulled free. Can you fix it? I asked, my voice small. He nodded. Yeah, but we need to do it now. I helped him lay out his supplies on the porch. Gloves, gauze, saline, a small suture kit. As he worked, the cubs mewed softly, pressing against their mother's limp body. Almost done, girl, Mike murmured, his hands moving with calm precision. Finally, he sat back, wiping sweat from his forehead. That'll hold. She'll be sore, but she'll live. Relief crashed over me so hard I had to grip the porch rail to stay upright. Thank you, I whispered. Mike packed up his kit and stood. We need to let her wake up on her own. Keep the cubs close. I nodded, my eyes on her sleeping face. But as the sedative wore off, she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy but focused. She looked at me, then at her cubs. Slowly, shakily, she got to her feet. Then, without warning, she picked up the stronger cub in her jaws, turned, and limped off the porch into the trees, leaving the other two huddled at my feet. I watched her disappear, my heart slamming in my chest, and all I could think was, why did she leave them with me? I stood there frozen, staring at the two tiny cubs huddled together on my porch. The morning light was just breaking through the trees, casting long shadows across the boards. My chest felt tight, like something was gripping it from the inside. The cubs whimpered softly, their small bodies pressed together for warmth. I crouched down slowly, trying not to scare them. Their eyes flicked up to me, wide and terrified. I could see their ribs through their spotted fur. Hey, it's okay, I whispered. I'm not gonna hurt you. They didn't move, just stared at me with those big, glassy eyes. My throat felt raw. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Behind me, Mike let out a quiet sigh. You can't keep them, he said. They're wild animals. I know that. But what choice do I have? He rubbed a hand over his face, looking tired and old in the pale dawn light. If she doesn't come back soon, they won't make it. I swallowed hard, nodding. I knew he was right, but the thought of letting them starve out here made my stomach twist. I spent the rest of the morning sitting on the porch with them. I brought out a shallow bowl of water and set it down near them. One of the cubs sniffed at it, then lapped weakly. The other just lay there, its eyes half closed. I went inside and tore up some leftover chicken into tiny pieces. When I came back out, they flinched away from my hands, but didn't run. I set the pieces down in front of them and backed away. After a long moment, the stronger cub leaned forward and began to eat. The smaller one stayed curled up, breathing shallowly. Please just hold on, I whispered. Hours passed. Mike stayed for a while, but eventually he left, promising to check in later. The sun climbed high, baking the porch boards under my feet. Sweat dripped down my back, but I didn't move. I just sat there, watching them, praying their mother would come back. By late afternoon, the smaller cub still hadn't eaten. Its breaths came in short, sharp gasps. I felt something crack inside me, watching its tiny chest struggle to rise and fall. Then, just as the sun began to dip below the trees, I heard it. A soft rustle in the bushes. My head snapped up. There she was. She stepped out of the shadows, moving slowly, her limp still there, but but not as bad as before. She dropped the cub she'd taken in the grass and sniffed the air. Her eyes locked onto mine. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. She padded forward onto the porch. The cubs let out tiny cries, lifting their heads weakly. She bent down, sniffing them both over, her nose moving quickly across their faces, their necks, their bellies. Then she turned to look at me. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Her golden eyes were calm, deep, like a forest pool. I felt something tighten in my throat. She bent down and picked up the weaker cub in her jaws. Then she nudged the stronger one with her paw until it stood up on shaky legs. She turned and started back toward the trees, the cubs stumbling after her. Halfway across the yard, she stopped and looked back at me. The dying light caught in her eyes, turning them to molten gold. For a moment, I thought she was going to come back. But she just stood there, staring at me, the cubs pressed against her legs. Then she turned and disappeared into the trees. That night, I sat on the porch long after the stars came out. I left a chunk of venison out for her, setting it on the spot where she always stood. The next morning, it was gone. I did the same thing the next day, and the next. Every morning, the meat was gone, but I never saw her again. Sometimes, when the wind shifts just right, I think I hear her chirrup from deep in the forest. And every time, my chest aches with something I don't have words for. Because I know she's out there. And maybe, in her own wild way, she remembers me too.